Hello everybody, it's good to see you all, and you're all very welcome indeed to this, our podcast for the 48 Acts. I'm Fergus Heffernan, and on my right hand side here is Paddy Rafter, who indeed is the author of the 48 Acts. You're very welcome indeed,
Thank
Paddy.
you very much, Fergus. Great to be here.
Good. Maybe I suppose we'll get straight into it.
Yes, why not?
We're hearing an awful lot about the 48 Acts and lots of different mediums and platforms
great.
At the moment.
It's great.
Yeah. So could you give us the executive brief on what is the 48 Acts?
The 48 Acts basically is a way to live your life a better, deeper way. A way to live your life and to deal with the sufferings, traumas, pain, and afflictions, addictions, or whatever the problems you have, how to overcome them in a logical, systematic, schematic way, and go forth and live well. And we think that many people listening to this will readily identify with, I have problems like they're terrible. I can't overcome them, and we're here to show that, and the 48 Acts is here to show that no matter how bad you think it is, no matter how alone you feel you are, no matter how terrible your situation is, or how nihilistic, how unmotivated you are, how indifferent you've become, this 48 Acts will revitalize your life. But it will also show you a way to deal with every problem in any way and go ahead and just live a proper life again. And it really, really does work, as you know. It really works. And in every case, with every person, and there's been so much good feedback. But I know that, and it's over quite a long time, from people who have followed the path of the 48 Acts and who have gotten well. And the purpose of this is to, I suppose, just in a very, you can listen to it, there's loads of radio interviews now and TV interviews and newspaper articles and newspaper interviews and all that. But this is our own podcast version of what the 48 Acts are, explaining them in a brief way, how they work, where they came from, how they originated, and why we're here, and the hope for the future.
Okay. Maybe one thing to point out, as I was listening to you there, it's normally when we come into something which is quite revolutionary, this, because you use the word rather than, self-help. This is self-reclaim.
Yes.
And it's not just about, it's for the people who have had all these things, and excuse my grammar here, but there's a reason for it, that we perceived were done to us or did happen to us in our past that caused difficulties in our lives. But it's also for the people who may have done things to others.
Yeah, exactly.
It's for everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's half of our target is the people who feel that they're beyond redemption.
Yeah.
My first ever art exhibition was called Redemption.
Okay.
And that was 15, 17 years ago. And on this idea, I've been obsessed with this idea for a long time of redemption, and the idea that some of us feel we've done so many things, or rightly or wrongly, because we speak about our idea of perception. It's how we view things. And our view may be erroneous, it may be wrong, but it's our view. And we feel we're beyond hope, beyond salvation, beyond any reach, and we're here for that cohort equally.
Yes. Yeah. So maybe before, Paddy, that we get into the workings and the dynamics of the 48 Acts and how they can help people and what actually are the 48 Acts and how they're broken down. Maybe if you tell us a little bit about yourself, because one thing that really struck me from, working with the 48 Acts and in my involvement, which we'll come to in time, is The one thing everybody has in common, both you and I, and everybody who's listening in to us, is that every one of us has a story to tell.
Yes.
And we're all part of a story. And
We're all part of a greater story.
And we're all characters in these great stories. But what we don't often understand, we don't, because we're never taught, is our understanding of those stories and how they have impacted on us and on others. So probably the best place to start is maybe a bit about your own story, background.
So the 48 Acts are born basically of my own story and my own experience, my own life, and my own understanding. So my my parents were very decent people. Worked very hard, both from farming stock, and they left the family farm when they got married because of various issues with my grandparents, and that was just my grandfather and my grandmother and whatever. So my parents left with nothing.
Okay.
Now you might think, oh, that was an incredibly stupid thing to do, but that's what they did. And my father worked in various different jobs, from working in coal mines to working as a labourer on building sites, and eventually he did very well, and he became a machine operator, and then a kind of a foreman in a big steel factory in Kilkenny here in Ireland. And my mother was a stay-at-home mother who lost 4 children through the way we didn't have a lot of money at the time. One of my sisters died. She was a year old. My mother had 4 more, 3 of whom were miscarriages. So she suffered a lot, and she'd had her own story with her father, and the fact that he was an alcoholic. I didn't know this, and because she never told the story. Yeah. She created a false narrative that he was this great guy and this practical saint. And he was far from a saint, you know. And he had these issues we can talk about some other time. Anyway, I had an idyllic childhood, and I was very good at sports. I was very bright in school. I was really good at soccer because we played on the streets. And I had an opportunity to go when I was 10 or 11 or 12 to go away for a trial, but my father wouldn't allow it. He didn't feel there was any place for an Irish lad to go to England. End of story.
And remember, in Ireland in those days, soccer was a foreign.
And it was a foreign game anyway. Yeah. So I was sent out to my grandparents when I was very young. I started when I was about 9 or 10, and I stayed there for practically the rest of my life.
And this would have been the grandparents on the farm that your parents had left?
Had left, yes.
Okay.
So I suppose the thinking on my father and mother's point of view was, since I was their only son, I would inherit the farm.
Okay.
Because there was a codicil put in there. It doesn't exist anymore, but there was a codicil put in called the Marriage Act, or a marriage article, I can't remember which now, but so that my father would eventually inherit a part of the farm. And he did inherit a part of it, not the whole lot of it, but a bit of it. And he wanted to kind of see, could we have a stronger say in the farm? So they sent me out there. Now, as you can imagine, my grandparents weren't mad keen on me. And though they were okay, like they were just of an era, and my extended family wouldn't be mad keen, though they were fine, but like the overriding concern was, this is the guy who's going to get the farm. So without getting bogged down in a whole load of detail, I ended up a tough childhood. The rest of my childhood was tough. It was made tougher by the fact that the early part of my childhood had been so idyllic, and that I was suddenly landed in a place at that time which was like outer Mongolia to me. where I knew nobody and nobody liked me and nobody wanted me, and I felt abandoned, I felt alone, I felt all those things. And that gave me my lifelong association with horses, because they were the only things I felt I could bond with. And I ended up going to college. The only way I could afford to go to college was to be sponsored by the local firm that my father worked for, and they paid for my education in college at that time, which was very lucky. And I worked for them while I was in college and afterwards, because I owed them a year or two's work. And then I went and I ended up lecturing in engineering, and I ended up in maths, physics, and then I ended up lecturing in university. It's now the Technical University of Ireland. Very technical, very nice. I loved it there. And at the same time I was doing music, because all my family were very musical. On my father's side, very musical. My great-great-granduncle went to America to be an opera singer, and was trying to pay his way through, and was killed in an accident in a coal mine. That was the end of his career. And I went from being very restrained and living in a very terrible and difficult situation to suddenly having some money, singing with a band, having money. All the girls liked me, everybody loved me, and this was heaven on earth. And I had a wonderful time in parts of college, and it was really flying. And I partied, and I was doing everything, and I was top of the class and everything. I did everything to excess, and everything to a maximum. And then I got married as quick as, like, when I was very young. I was 24, 25 when I got married. And by that stage, I was already fallen off the rails in terms of alcohol addiction. And so I had 4 children, and it was a difficult life. Parts of my life, I ended up being hospitalized many times in psychiatric hospitals, because they thought I was mad or bad. They didn't understand I was sad. And it wasn't easy for my wife, and my children were very small. There was only 2 of them at the time. And then I got I got sober, if you like, for quite a long time. And I worked as a racehorse trainer. I trained my own racehorses, and I worked many different things. I was an opera singer. I sang in Italy and sang with lots of different places, and was relatively successful. Not the success that I had hoped to be, because I always wanted to be an opera singer. And I studied with some of the best people in the world, and I always felt I was good enough, and everybody said I was. But I think the various different stresses and pressures, and the various different things I carried from my childhood and from my perceptions, I was always undermining myself. I could never cope. But when it finally came to it, it all went south. And it was one failure after another, and I would get so far and it would all crash. And I worked really hard, and when I was bringing up the children, they all went to private school. They all had horse lessons, and they had private schools and private music lessons. One of my sons is an international violinist. 2 more are lawyers, barristers and solicitors, and my daughter is a cellist and a counsellor. So they all had, we put a lot of work. My wife was very with me on that particular thing, in that we put everything we had into bringing our children up and giving them everything that we possibly could. And I probably I suppose I thought I was cured. it's very hard. You don't want to realize, you don't want, I don't know, it's very hard to pinpoint a reason. But I ended up back in addiction, and it was worse than ever. And the whole world fell apart again, and I moved out, and I did lots of things, and I don't want to get into all this stuff. Suffice it to say, it was a hell on earth.
And there were many hospitalizations,
Again,
both
yes.
voluntary and involuntary.
Voluntary and involuntary, yes.
Yeah.
I know both sides of it, and I've been in rehab centres, I've been everywhere, and I always, simultaneously with that, I still studied. All my life I've studied. All my life I've quested for knowledge. Since I was a small child, I spent a lot of time with the Dominicans in the Black Abbey. I was very friendly with one of them in particular, who was a great educator and really educated me in an extraordinary way for somebody of where I came from on the streets in Kilkenny. And I never lost that. And I never lost that quest for knowledge, that quest for understanding. It was something that drove me from as young as I can remember. And there's a lot of interesting stories around that. We'll talk about it some other time. But anyway, it culminated in the me being in hospital, in intensive care with double pneumonia, pancreatitis, and lots of other things, and dying, and everybody expecting me to die tomorrow.
Well, you had been in the intensive care for a number of...
Yes, but this is my last effort.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when people are there and they're talking about you as if you can't really hear them, you know what I mean? And they were wondering, like, would I last the night? You know? And I was kind of, the reality is it'd be an awful lot easier if I was dead, because I wouldn't have to go through this pain anymore.
Yeah.
And then I said, is this it, like, you know? And I said to whomsoever was listening, God, whatever was listening, I said, if I get one more chance to get out of here, to survive, I will try to get well. I will try to understand, and I will try to do something about it, if you just give me a chance. So anyway, thank God, or whatever way you like to look at it, I survived, and I worked day and night thinking, how can I stay well? There must be a way. I'd tried everywhere. I'd been to hundreds of counsellors and psychiatrists, and I mean, I'm only slightly joking there. Counsellors, psychiatrists, psychologists, psychotherapists, addiction, you name it. Like, I've been to them all, backwards. I've been to 12-step programs, and I've been to 20-step programs, you name it. I've been in them all, and nothing ever really worked for me. That doesn't mean they don't work. It didn't work for me. And I discovered some things through my own experience, having gone so far down in pain and suffering. So far down, to such a depth of hell that I was in for so long, where I was suicidal every day, where suicide was the ideation of suicide was my greatest friend. Because I comforted myself, well, I can always check out tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know? And I said, okay. And I worked, and I really thought, and I don't know how, to this day I don't know how exactly, but I came up with an understanding of the world that was based on, you must remember that I had studied physics, I had studied philosophy, as well as studying music and all those things, I had spent years studying theoretical physics. I spent years studying theology. I'd spent years studying all those things. Like years and years. Like I would do it voraciously. Like insatiable appetite for it. I could not stop. And so I had a wide knowledge of a wide history, anthropology. I knew each and every. I knew a huge amount each and every subject, which was quite astounding. Do you know what I mean? Because it was an addiction. It was another addiction. I don't know what it was. It was a need that a hole I couldn't fill. To try and find meaning for existence. To try and find meaning in my life. To try and find, was this a dream? Was this a reality? What was the purpose? What was this? I'd done religion. I'd done everything. I was brought up as an extremely conservative Catholic. I'd been an altar boy. I used to pray every day. Until I could find neither belief nor meaning in anything. And through my recovery and my getting well, I discovered a way of understanding the world that I'd never come across before, because it was my way. It was my own experience, coupled with what I knew. And it was revelatory for me, because it brought together so many things I had read and understood, and some things I didn't understand, with my own unique way of looking at them. So I started to understand where I was, my predicament, why I thought the way I did, why the world was the way it was, why perception was the way it was, like why I was so unhappy, why I saw, and like there were valid reasons for me to see this, and why I hated myself. And there were valid reasons why I hated the world, why I didn't believe the world existed half the time. Like, it was that bad. It was this almost disambiguation. And as I started to grow and understand more, I became a little bit more free. And the more I became free, the more I understood. And the more I understood, the more I became free, until I became somewhat aware of another way of being, another way to live. That I could free myself from all the hates, all the shames, all the guilts, all the hurt, all the damage, all the things that really destroyed my life, and live again in a new way. And I did, and it did work. I didn't have it I had all this in my head. And I thought it was actually working. I didn't need to drink. I didn't need to do any of those things. But not only that, I could learn to start to live with myself. I could start to learn to forgive myself, because the person we find the hardest to forgive is ourselves. I could start to deal, and I still had many issues, and and like my life is still not a bed of roses, but I can deal with it, because this is a path for dealing with no matter how bad it is or what your life is like, that I can still deal with it, and be happy, and live, and to be appreciate where I am at. So then I said, okay, because most of my friends are dead. They're all dead by suicide. If they're not dead by suicide, they're dead by accidents. The remainders are most. I can only think of one who's not. And I said, And I've spoken to so many people, and I know so many people who are so traumatized, caught up in addiction, so caught up in pain, hurt, damage. I said, if I could only help them, if my suffering and my pain could help them, then it would be all worth it. So the 48 acts, I'm sorry for going on about so long, but it really is necessary to explain it.
No. That's because actually, as I'm listening to you now, because I remember when we first, we'll come to that,
yes,
about how we end up joined together.
Yes.
But like the 48 acts, the first of 48 acts, God, I'll never get my head around 48 acts. But the more and more you're with it, you actually discover there's 3 acts with 3 subsets of 16, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And the first 16, and it all came so clear as you were speaking there now, believe it or not, in the way you've presented it. So the first group of 16 is really about truth and honesty.
Yeah, well, so the first is
to a certain extent.
I said, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I hadn't named the 48 acts. I'm going to stick this down in a book somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know how, and I'll talk about it after, because I found one of the many things I discovered was I had severe ADHD, which I never knew about, which explains so much. Like why I liked maths, why I liked stuff that you could do fast.
Yes.
But why I detested writing an essay that was 5 pages long. It was insurmountable to me.
Yeah.
Why I'd walk around tables trying to write stuff down, Yeah. But if it was a physics problem, grand, that's a problem. I could sort it. Because I felt that it was all perceptions. But anyway, I said, if I can help somebody else, so I will stick it down. So, when I tried to collate it, and I had it all in my head in serried ranks of exactly this, I just needed to get it from my head to the page. And that's where you come in, because when you had heard me talking about it, but it didn't exist at the time, and you helped me to you actually had to take dictation like I was Cicero going around with a scribe in ancient Rome, where I would talk it out of my head, because I couldn't do anything else. I would talk it out, and you literally typed it up. Literally. Because I couldn't sit down at the typewriter and do it myself. I couldn't sit down at the computer and do it. And that's how I formed them. That's how I put them on the paper. From my head to the paper. And so the 48 acts, this first 16 are basically the truths that we don't often accept to be as true. So if you understand the 48 acts, if you have knowledge of them, if you understand them, they will lead you to an awareness that you can live your life no matter what circumstances you're in, no matter how bad your life is, no matter how good it is, no matter how indifferent it is, no matter it really doesn't matter what, where, when, or why, because it works everywhere. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so the first 16 are about the ideas of truths. Yes. And
you actually wrote here, and I purposely wrote this down because I thought you described it very well. You said, we have been living in a story.
Yes.
But this is our own story.
Well, this is it.
So for most of us, life has been shaped by inherited beliefs, unquestioned narratives, and have truths dressed up as wisdom. We're taught who to be, what to chase, and how to measure our worth, without ever asking why. And then you said the 16 axioms are designed to strip away the illusions, challenge the conditioning, and bring you face to face with what's real.
Yes. So, that's very well said.
Yeah. I only wrote it down. You wrote it.
Basically, the 16 axioms are self-evident truths, yes, that we don't want, maybe, or don't really get. You must remember, when you are in addiction of whatever kind, you don't want to be in reality. you're taking yourself away from reality. The only way to get well is to come back to reality.
Yeah.
Another thing I discovered was that all of us are born in and are brought up addicted. It's just it manifests itself in others, in some of us more than others. And I discussed that in the book, how that is the case. We're addicted to the ideas of approval, the need for approval, the need for appreciation, the need for acclamation, the need for affirmation, the need for all those applauses. Because when we're taught from an early age that when we get those, our parents or guardians will be good, nice, they'll be nice. But if we do something that displeases them, then we will have a different result. So we learn that if I do this, this is what will happen. And if I do something that is perceived as bad, that this is what's going to happen. Right? So I learn as I grow that if I behave in a certain fashion, within certain norms and conditioning, that a beneficial outcome will occur. And that's fine. Except in many of us, we take it too far. Because we're all addicted. We're just on a scale, 1 to 10.
Yeah.
And for many of us, this takes over our whole way of being, of thinking, of perception, of understanding. I talk about that a lot in the book, and also understanding that our perceptions of events, our perceptions of trauma, my perceptions and understanding is what counts, not the reality as it did happen from some objective outside source. This is where we confuse reality. That from some outside source, this happened to Johnny, but it happened to Jimmy as well, but the same results, but he didn't turn out, he was grand. What's wrong with you? So it's my perception of the problem, or what happened, or the trauma is key. So when I discovered that, then I discovered that was another thing I could hold on to. Then I learned how, and I discussed this in the first 16 acts, how resentment, be it real, resentment towards people, places, to resentment toward everything, is so corrosive. And I had many reasons, valid reasons, to be resentful and angry towards people. I had equally many very valid reasons to be angry towards myself, to hate myself, and all these are negatives, and these are negative energies. Negative, these are corrosive, because it's like me drinking poison and expecting somebody else to die with it. Yeah?
Yeah.
And the first 16 acts kind of explores all this of where we are in reality. What's the situation? So stripping back all the layers that is not really done, Fergus, in any other forum that I know of, or in any other method. I hate to use the word methodology or program, but I just can't think of another word at the moment. But that strips away everything, gives you a way of understanding and looking at things in a new way.
Yeah, and it's a way of seeing clearly.
For
the first time,
because it was me. I was as blind as a bloody bat.
Yeah.
I couldn't see anything. And I also learned it wasn't this is a big one, a big take from this. It wasn't all my fault.
Yeah.
You must remember, we're conditioned. We're conditioned that it's my fault, it's your fault, you're no good, you this, you did that, you did this, you're a no good bum, you're this, you're that, no matter what you try and do, no matter how you try and appease people, you try and make up for your past transgressions, you're always going to be a bum. So eventually that hate turns inward, and you say to yourself, you're not worth saving. So supposing for example, a Christian, or let's just pick Christian for a minute. It's the easiest one. Though any religion is in many ways the same thing. You're beyond redemption. You're beyond saving. You're not worth saving. Why would once you go there, it's very hard to get back because it's your perception. Nobody can save you then until you decide to look for saving yourself.
Well, actually, that's a good place to lead into the next 16, because you wrote, each axiom acts like a key, unlocking a part of your mind held in conscious agreements with something false.
Yes.
So it brings you to a position where you can now see clearly, step out of the illusion and into truth.
Yes, the only place we can be is in truth and in reality.
And the first thing you wrote about the 16 false beliefs, which are the next 16, is when we live in a world of mistruths and unrealities, unknown to ourselves, our minds become open to being manipulated by a series of false beliefs. And you actually wrote that the corporate world and their ideologies want you to believe to be true. Yes. Now that's just one part of it. But it's looking at your own false beliefs, isn't it?
Well, yeah, so there's lots of things there's lots of things we take to be true that are not true.
Yes.
And never has it been more so true than nowadays that we live in a world of obsessive media, of hate media, of conflict journalism, of conflict, where hate, hurt sells. Yeah. Because it's tapping in the media and social media to our most primitive parts of our brain, which is where, 'cause I was fortunate I'd understood anthropology, history so well, biology so well. And it's tapping into stuff that's in us for millions and millions of years that we're not aware of. We don't know, it's visceral to us. So it's making us hate everybody else, hate them, hate the other. See in a very binary way, it's them and us. And that's manipulation. We're being manipulated all the time.
And it's having catastrophic implications.
Devastating, catastrophic. Like you look around you, everywhere you look, in Europe, in America, in Australia, wherever you look, there's this huge divide opening up. This lack of discourse, when we never had as much opportunity to talk, to be connected. We have never been as disconnected. We have every technology available, yet we've never been more manipulated. And the problem is, because if you don't believe it, you can't see it. So the 16 false beliefs takes the veil of uncertainty, like you know as well as I do. All over the world, there's an event may happen that you see with your own eyes. And yet the narratives will come and tell you that something totally different happened. And within a week, that's what you'll remember, is the narrative, not what you saw yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's the way we're programmed.
Constant.
We're programmed if you keep saying it, yes, yes, yes. So this teaches you, because to get well, and it teaches us, and so many interviewers have said this to me recently on American radio, on English radio, UK radio. It's a societal program as well.
Beyond doubt, yeah.
And that's true. It wasn't necessarily my plan when I started off.
No.
But the more I saw it, the more I saw that this is not, because we are not an isolated dot in a series of dots. We are an interconnected wave in a sea of waves that all must function together. We've been manipulated. Yeah. For nefarious, evil, whatever you term the word evil. And we talk about evil a lot and where it comes from. We are being manipulated and fed false facts, false narratives, false stories, you have false perceptions, and this teaches you how to take them away.
And that's it in a nutshell. And the great difficulty is that perceptions and reality are supposed to be different, because they are different. We will get into that in another video.
Yes.
But unfortunately now we've lived in a world where our perceptions have become our realities.
Yes.
Now that's the most dangerous place we could ever be in the world, because now it means there's no truth anymore.
No, there is our form. It's your truth,
what
right?
you want it to be.
So your truth can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
So there is no truth.
Yeah.
And in a world without truth, in a world without meaning, in a world you lose beauty. So we've lost beauty.
Yeah.
We've lost our value of art, our value of music, our value of education, our value of so many things. They're all being denigrated, dumbed down, because it's easier, because you're being told, look, this is what's this is, and we want to belong to the herd, but we want to belong to the group, to the clan. So we accept this, and we listen to dumbed down versions of everything.
Okay.
Because it's easier for us to be manipulated in that case. And it is a fact that is so. You might say, well, what's that got to do with getting well?
Well, it has everything.
Addiction, it has everything to do with
getting well.
It has everything to do with it.
Like we discovered going through this, that everybody knows now that society has never been so fractured.
Yes.
Because it's never been so lost. It's never been, but that's only because individuals have never been so lost.
So lost.
Without meaning, it's like floating without a compass in the sea on your own, with no paddle.
We have never had such a crisis, a calamity of addiction, of obesity, of anxiety, of depression,
of autism,
of all these things, and blame.
Yeah.
Blame. There's blame everywhere. Judgment. Like there are whole TV networks and social media platforms that live on blame. Blame. Shame. If you can learn to get rid of your shame, your blame, and your judgment, you are fast on the way to really dealing with your problems.
Yeah.
And the only way you can do this is to take the veils away. So that's what I mean.
The first two acts, the first two groups of 16, the first one is about understanding and facing them. The second one is about realizing them.
This is not a short-term fix.
Yes. And that brings us into the 16 key actions.
Yes, so it's not a short-term fix in that you need to, though it does, it really is strange to me, having wrote them. I often feel like reading it like that, it has a life of its own, that it's nothing to do with me. I really, really mean that. And you can read them relatively quickly and go back and start to read them again. But I guarantee you, if you read it, you will never be the same again.
Yeah.
You will never be the same again.
Yeah.
And you will go back and you will start picking out things.
Yeah.
And you will start to understand. Because once you have knowledge, you will begin to understand. And understanding leads you to become aware. Yeah? There is no other way. They can tell you, there's all this guys out there and they'll sell you this, sell you that, sell you rubbish. This really works because it works. I don't really understand. I think it's a number of reasons. But when you go back and you read it again, you will see more and you will see more. So the 16 key actions is basically, here are the things that you can do. Having understood the others, or having tried to understand them and process them, these are the things you need to do to rebuild, to reclaim your life. That your life is yours, that it's not controlled by some external mediating force, but it's controlled by you. That you regain your voice. That you have a life that benefits those around you, as well as benefiting yourself. A life that is worth living. A life that you want to live in. A life where you can feel happiness and contentment and peace of mind today. And so many people who are listening to this or who are looking at this, I know, will say, if I had 5, I would give away everything I have for 10 minutes peace of mind.
Yeah.
And to be able to have peace of mind is the ultimate gift.
Ultimate.
And all the money and all the possessions in the world are meaningless. You know?
And that's where, and now you know where 48 come from.
Yes,
316s.
Yes.
And then, which is the book, and you have the book here.
So here we are, the book.
And you did rightly say, and then we came up with the book, The Layman's Guide to the 48 Acts.
So Fergus having helped me to actually literally scribe them down, because that's the way we did the first draft, was literally I would talk them out of my head, and once I got them out of my head, then we could look at them and I could start to control myself a bit better and edit them, and we were on the road to at least getting them from one realm to another. And Fergus was without Fergus, I struggle to imagine how I would ever have gotten them from my head onto the. I would have been a speaker without a book, because I couldn't imagine how I would have a coherent, logical. With Fergus's kindness and understanding, because Fergus was for many years a well-known counsellor and therapist and all those things, but he had infinite patience, which was the key thing. But he also had his own, and you've had your own trauma and your own stories. So he's also the first person who has taken up and carried the 48 Acts and lived the life of the 48 before anybody else, apart from myself. And I think you could say that you found that it changed your life.
Oh, I tell you, when I came to see you on the advice of a friend, and I won't get into it because we have an in-depth piece on the website paddyrafter.com on my story and the video of it and everything. So this isn't the forum for that. But I did come to hear Paddy speaking one night on foot off somebody else's advice, reluctantly, might I add. Best decision I ever made. Now, to put it all in a nutshell, it's, to me, in actual fact, it almost became like almost a symbiotic relationship, because talk about timing and everything.
Yes.
Because, I mean, my working life, as you pointed out, was all over the world, but I had worked in a very microcosmic of understanding minds and brains and how people got into difficulties and helping them. Trying to help them. And the great skill set I had, but because of the trauma that had happened and how it all played out, I lost total confidence in myself, which you do, and in my skill set. And the skill set of a therapist is the words you mentioned. It's kindness, understanding, it's patience, and just be there and let the person unfold. And we'll, between us, we'll find the way. But I remember listening to you talking that night, because you actually had the macrocosmic. Now, I had never met anybody since or before who had that breadth of knowledge about almost every aspect of society and humanity and history that went back to the beginning of time. But when I was writing down, because that's what we did, I recorded, wrote down, and as I was doing them,
we
write them down, and I go home and I'd handwrite it, then I'd type it all up, and I'd come back to Paddy and say,
"This is it.
This is what you think. You want to make changes," and you did, obviously. And 5 months it took us to do that. But in the process of doing that, I actually began to get well.
Yes.
Now, I wasn't able at the time to put a finger on, was it that, it was that. No, a very strange thing happened.
That's the thing.
That's the thing. You can't actually name it.
No, you can't.
No,
It kind of takes. It has almost a life of its own.
Yeah.
So once you interact with it, or you engage with it, or you read it,
Yeah.
and you begin, it works subliminally. It works in your brain, and you start to see things differently.
Yeah.
You see them afresh, not with the false certainties
Yeah.
that you did have, and then you learn many things. But one of them is you learn that, like in your trauma, like Fergus had a major episode of
We'll call it a fall from grace.
with fall from grace, yes, for a variety of reasons, which he deals with very well on the website for those interested. But suffice to say, it was a traumatic, catastrophic falling from grace for somebody who was all over the world and regarded as one of the hippest telly kind of what would you call it, telly kind of trauma counselors and all this, whatever wording, and it's a big falling from, and you were devastated and you ended up in a very bad place.
Yeah.
And
do you know what? Two things happened when I was working through this. The first one was, if you ask me now to give it in 2 sentences, what made me well with the 48 Acts, is that what it gave to me, you allowed me and you brought me into reality without fear.
yes,
Because my life had been lived in fear, which means you would then live in unreality.
Yes.
Because reality, it's and you allow me to separate it. And I would never have, and all we've achieved in the 7 and 8 years since, I would never have got in there except I had sat down with you and typed up all of these. And that's what I wrote, the Layman's Guide, my experience of using
exactly
the 48 Acts probably in a more colloquial way.
Certainly. I think so. Fergus wrote the Layman's Guide, which was basically his experience of living the 48 Acts. Not necessarily by design at the start, since you did it by kind of accident almost.
Well, you know what it was. You very kindly said a minute ago that the book, The 48 Acts, and getting out would never have happened unless I arrived at your door. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, in that, because it was, but within that was me finding the belief again in my skill set. Mm-hmm. So my skill set then began to come to the fore, which then allowed your story to come out.
Yes.
And between the two, we ended up with
true
Project 48.
Yes.
Which is now where we're coming to.
Well, yes. So I suppose the Project 48 is really the idea that this is both a macrocosmic and a microcosmic thing. So it's a whole way of living for the individual. It is equally true that it's a whole way of living and a whole way of living for society, for our family, our clan, our city, our country, in this increasingly destroying world, full of anxiety, full of so many things, never has there been as much unhappiness, never has there been as much connection, but there's no real connection. So Project 48 is basically an idea to try and get across the ideas contained within the 48. First of all, the ideas contained within the 48 Acts in whatever methodology we can. So we have the 48 Acts book and obviously the Layman's Guide to it. I've also, as I've said, I've gone back and restarted, because I've always been involved in music. And music is a way, and I understand it more than a lot of people, I really do, to get at an emotion in a way that a word won't. So it's through music. Project 48 is, I have an art exhibition because I've been painting my entire life. I have an art exhibition of 48 paintings, one of which coincides with each of the acts.
Yeah.
And that's a way of visualizing, that's a way of seeing it, because sometimes you can see something through a perception of sight and it will click for you that all the words in the world, words and words and words will not. These are all ways to try and get it out there, to spread the word that this really does work, that this will change your life, will change the world if we can just get it out there. And we also have, as part of that, the International Institute, which is part of Project 48, which is this an institute which is basically a place, a forum, an area where we can get the scientific part of it, if you like, or the more studying part of it, where we can get various experts on various different topics.
Exactly. It's the International Institute for the Advancement of Human Understanding.
Exactly. Which we set up, by the way.
But what it is also doing, it's not just two of us, because that opens the door then to people who understand the world, who understand the difficulties. And this is not about you're right, I'm wrong. This is about, we have evolved for millions of years for one primary reason only, because we've always cooperated and collaborated together.
Yes.
Probably for about 200 years now, we believe we've been evolving by competition, that we get bigger and faster and stronger. And the competitive world is killing us, and we don't, of course we need a bit of it, but not where it's arrived, where everything is a competition now.
Part of what we do in the book that's coming up, where I will explore this these are just the details, the science behind it. Everything is of importance is in the 48 Acts.
Yes.
We just filling in the stuff around it so that we can move on.
Yeah.
And understanding why things have, because we are not able to cope with the rate of change.
Yeah.
Because we never did. Our past has been glacially slow change. Suddenly we're changing like day by day by day, and we just can't cope. With the result, we're all falling, because we have only developed in one particular area and not in we're advanced, very advanced Stone Age people.
Yeah.
Who have not evolved in any other way.
Yeah, we've evolved
many ways.
Cognitively, but not emotionally.
And then we've evolved cognitively, but we've not evolved emotionally or in any other of the deeper levels of consciousness that we should have to accompany our cognitive evolution, if you like. And if we don't try and balance those out, we're going to, like anything that's hugely out of balance, we're going to go boom, gone. And like we really face this challenge, you could say, this fundamental challenge of our existence, where we may not necessarily be here. We're in this existential crisis where we may face the utter demise of our species, either through climate catastrophe, nuclear catastrophe, or a host of other catastrophes, because we are uneducated and we're ploughing along blindly. And so part of Project 48 is to open the idea, the doors, the eyes of people to see that your life is not about you. Your life is about you in the context of your society, of your clan, of your wherever you are. That you are not a series of dots, but a series of waves interconnected. And I am fundamentally convinced that if we can get people to see this, then we have some chance of saving ourselves and saving the world from the demise that's imminent and catastrophic. And none of us that we know of want a world destroyed, because the problem is we are so advanced in terms of our weapons. That's the thing we've evolved. I'll discuss it in another video, and it'll be in the book that I'll be bringing out. The thing we've always advanced in first is our weapons, because our primary instinct is our need for territory. It's our primary instinct as a human being, our understanding of territory and our defense of same. It comes before every other single thing.
Yeah.
And that's why we need the Institute to show and prove these things. Because with so much fake news and false facts and all this, to try and do it and in innovative ways. But we've always developed weapons the fastest, before anything else. Now we've developed weapons that are so advanced that we can't use them. Because if we do use them, we won't exist. Isn't it the ultimate joke?
Yeah.
If I use the weapons we have now, our nuclear weapons, boom, we're gone.
And spend trillions
and we spend
dollars
trillions and trillions that they would never need, and yen and whatever other currencies, because everybody else is doing it. If that money, imagine if that money wasn't spent on those type of arms, but was spent on freeing people, on health, on education, on free understanding, on a way of living, of elevating people's standards of life, of elevating people's way of being. How wonderful the world would be. Equally so, Project 48 is about the individual.
Yeah.
Because we're here fundamentally, equally, to help the individual person to get well.
And like this shows it, and it shows it in reality all throughout, that if individuals can get well within themselves and find meaning within themselves, society will be okay.
Yes.
Because society is only broken down because individuals have
yes,
broken
but
down.
we're reaching what has been foretold. We're reaching the crisis point.
Now, I know you write about, and it'll be in the next book that we're doing anyway, the whole idea, this is not the first time this has happened.
No.
There is a precedence.
There's many precedents. The difference is we weren't as technologically advanced.
Yeah.
That's the only difference.
Yeah.
It also explains why you will find that people who are farmers are on the land and are more in touch with nature are more conservative by nature. Because in our memory as farmers, and I would consider myself primarily a farmer, apart from everything else, there's a DNA memory of the times we have failed. Of the DNA, where our civilization, which at that time would have been a small part of the earth, was literally wiped out because we overused it, and it became desiccated, died in a desert. So we inflicted climate change or climate catastrophe on where we were living. I can show you many, many examples of that. Now what is it? So we've been at this for at least 5,000 years. The first, that I can think of, the first catastrophe happened 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. Maybe a lot longer. And that was localized. Now, if we have another one of this in the same way, we're going to wipe out the world. And we can't recover. Unless the only way to recover is to allow people to change their minds. You can't change anybody's mind. You can't change anybody. That's one of the things I learned. But you can change yourself. And if you change, you can affect change on society. So it gives your life meaning. One of the many ways to give your life meaning. You can change your life. You can change society by changing yourself first. By taking responsibility, by understanding, by believing in the value and the sacredness of all life, of human life, irrespective of where they're from. It doesn't matter. All life is sacred. All human life is of equal value. And we bring these beliefs. And like those are redundant of things that we know, but I'm trying to keep religion out of this, because the minute you go into religion, you go into the food fights of, well, I'm right, they're wrong. So if I'm there right, they're wrong. So therefore I have to go off and kill all those guys, and we end up back where we started.
Yeah. And, you know, basically, Paddy, as we wind up the podcast, looking at the book there, it says 48 acts. What's this? Living your life a different way.
Living your life a better, deeper way. Yes,
it's a new way of living. And when you break it all down, the way we've evolved, the pace of our evolution, the way it has all sped up, the real reality of what has happened is, because we're not programmed or designed to live in a world that's going too fast, we're now shutting down as humans. And that's so obvious now. And the greatest insanity would be to continue living in the world the way we are now living in it.
But
because it's very obvious we're not able to do it. But it is
going to happen that we're not going to, because there isn't going to be a world to live in.
No.
And the people who are living are becoming increasingly sick, increasingly this. There's a word I want to use. Self-despised.
Yeah.
Because we know deep in our soul, in our heart, that this is all wrong.
Yeah.
We know it.
And we just seem powerless. That's the problem, isn't it?
We feel powerless, and we feel unable to change. But we can affect change by changing ourselves.
Yeah. And this is what the 48 acts is about.
All about, because you must first of all heal yourself, and by healing yourself, then you can see with clarity and a new vigor, because you're free from fear, free from the petty outer false self, freed from all those things, so you can live, you can stand up and really challenge and change the world bit by bit.
Yeah, and I've been the first disciple.
Yes, indeed.
Of the 48 acts,
exactly.
Can categorically sit here and say that when I learned to live in a world of reality, which you taught me to within those, I now live in a world with no fear. Now, that's not to say I don't get afraid.
Yes.
But I know what to do with it now.
Exactly, but that's a big difference.
Yeah.
That's true, yes.
And all of this is in the website, which is paddyrafter.com. You'll see everything around everything we've spoken about. But thank you very much, and thank you, Paddy.
Thank you very much, Ferguson. It's been great to kind of just try and bring together clearly as we can what this is all about.
Yeah.
All of this is dealt with we deal with every single act, what they mean in great detail. We deal with lots of other things. We're only trying to get this together. We've funded this ourselves.
Yep.
There's no external funding. This is us. So we're dealing with it as best we can, as fast as we can.
Yeah.
And but we have all of these dealt with in the 48 acts. It explains each one. Then there's a video accompanying on the website that does so.
Yeah.
And we will do more as soon as we can move along. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Fergus.
Thank you very much, and thanks for tuning in and for staying with us. And please God, we'll see you in future videos and in future times. Thank you.
Thanks.